There's a green oak tree at the river's bend. A chain of gold doth there suspend a cat as wise as he can be, who day and night walks round that tree. To the right he springs, a song to sing. To the left he treads, a tale to tell.
To tell this first story, I'm going to use these Russian nesting dolls that are called Matryoshka. They come one inside the other, each one just a little bit smaller. Now once, in a certain kingdom, there lived a rich merchant. And he was married to a lovely wife, and they had a daughter. Her name was Vasilisa, and she was so very pretty that they always called her Vasilisa the Beautiful. When Vasilisa was 8 years old, her mother became very, very sick, and she called Vasilisa to her bedside and said, "My child, I'm about to die, but before I die, I wish to give you my blessing." And from the bedclothes, she gave her a little tiny doll made of wood. "If ever you are in trouble, give this doll something to eat and something to drink, and she will help you." And with that, the mother kissed Vasilisa, and then she died. Well, Vasilisa and her father were very, very sad, but after a certain number of years, the father decided that Vasilisa needed a new mother. So he married a widow who had 2 daughters of her own. But they were very cruel, and all 3 of them hated Vasilisa. And they were always trying to think of hard jobs for Vasilisa to do. But no matter what task she was given, Vasilisa was always able to complete it. And how did she do that? Her little magic doll was helping her. They sent her out in the woods hoping she would get thin and sunburned, but the little doll gave her a special magic herb to protect her skin. And so they lived for many years, and the girls grew bigger. And Vasilisa was still very beautiful. And when all 3 girls were of marriageable age, all of the young men in the village all wanted to marry Vasilisa, and that made the stepmother very, very angry. Well, the merchant went away on a long trip, and the stepmother moved them into a house at the edge of the great dark forest where dwelt the witch Baba Yaga, a horrible hag, cunning and sly, who gobbled folk up in the wink of an eye. And day after day she sent Vasilisa into the forest of the witch. But each day Vasilisa was safe because of her magic doll. So at last the stepmother hatched a plot. She said to the 3 girls, "I'm going to bed. You each have your tasks to do. You are to make lace with pins. You are to knit with knitting needles, and you, Vasilisa, you are to spin." Well, she went to bed, and the 3 continued their tasks. But at a certain time, the oldest stepsister blew out the only candle that gave them light. And the 2 sisters said, "Well, we can continue to do our jobs." One said, "My pins are making sparks as I make lace." And the other one said, "My knitting needles are making sparks as I knit. But you, Vasilisa, you cannot see to spin, so you must go into the forest and get a light from Baba Yaga. So Vasilisa took her little wooden doll and she went into the great dark forest. She walked all night long. And then suddenly she saw riding through the forest a white horse with a rider on his back. His clothes were white, his bridle was white, and dawn lit the sky. She walked on a little farther, and she saw a second horse, a red horse, and the rider upon his back had red clothing. His bridle was red, and the sun rose in the sky. She walked all day long, and then she saw a black horse streak by with a rider dressed in black. His bridle was black, and it was night. And then Vasilisa saw where she was. Before her was a great stockade fence, and on the top of each fence post was a skull that glowed with an unearthly light. And the gate of the stockade fence was made of human bones, and the lock was a mouth with teeth. And suddenly there was a great clattering in the sky. There was coming the horrible witch, Baba Yaga. She was riding in her bowl called a mortar, beating it with a stick called a pestle, and sweeping up her tracks and back of her with a broom. She landed before Vasilisa. Vasilisa curtsied to her. "Good day to you, Granny. I have come for a light." "Well," said the witch, "perhaps I will give it to you if you perform every single task I give you." And then she walked up to the fence and she opened the gate of teeth. Inside the fence was Baba Yaga's house. It stands up on chicken legs, and it spins round and round. The house knelt down before her, and Baba Yaga and Vasilisa went inside the house. Baba Yaga lay down on the stove. She said, "Open the oven and give me my dinner." Inside the oven was enough food to feed an army, and thin Baba Yaga gobbled it all down, leaving only a crust of bread and a cup of milk for Vasilisa to eat. And then Baba Yaga said, "Tomorrow, this is what you must do. You must clean my house. And then someone has mixed a great deal of dirt in with my grain. You must clean every single kernel, and then cook my dinner. And if you do not complete those tasks, I will devour you." And she went to sleep on top of the stove, snoring away. So Vasilisa took the bread and the milk and she fed it to her little doll, and the doll's eyes began to glow. And she said, "Go to sleep, Vasilisa, for the morning is wiser than the evening." And Vasilisa went to sleep. When she woke up the next morning, she saw beyond the stockade fence the white rider race by, and it was dawn. Baba Yaga got up and she said, "Remember, do everything I told you." And she jumped into her mortar, beat it with a pestle, and flew off for the day. The red rider rode by, and the sun rose. And then Vasilisa saw that her little doll had already cleaned the house, and she had cleaned every single kernel of grain. "Now," said the doll, "just make the dinner for the witch, and all will be well." When Baba Yaga returned that night, she was very surprised that Vasilisa had been able to do all of the work. She took the cleaned kernels of grain and clapped her hands, and magically from nowhere appeared 3 pairs of floating hands, and they took the grain away to grind it. And then Baba Yaga ate her huge supper, and she said, "Tomorrow you are to complete the same tasks, but someone has mixed dirt in with all my poppy seeds. Clean each seed for me. And then after her meal, Baba Yaga went to sleep, and again Vasilisa fed her little magic doll, who promised to help her. And the next day, the doll completed the housework and the cleaning of the poppy seeds, and Vasilisa cooked the great supper for the hungry witch. And when Baba Yaga returned, again she was amazed that Vasilisa had completed all the tasks she had given her. And she clapped her hands, and again the mysterious floating pairs of hands took away the poppy seeds to press them into oil. And as Baba Yaga completed her huge dinner, she said to Vasilisa, "Well, don't just stand there. Talk to me. Aren't there any questions you would like to ask me about the things that you have seen here? But remember, he who knows too much grows old before his time." And Vasilisa said, "Yes, I do have some questions, Granny. Who is the rider on the white horse?" "He is my dawn, so fair." "And who is the rider on the red horse?" "He is my sun, so red." "And who is the rider on the black horse?" "He is my night, so dark." Are there any more questions you wish to ask me? Well, Vasilisa thought about those mysterious floating hands, but she remembered what Baba Yaga had told her: he who knows too much grows old before his time. So she said, "No, I don't have any more questions for you." And then Baba Yaga said, "But I have a question for you. How was it that you were able to complete all of my impossible tasks?" Vasilisa did not wish to tell Baba Yaga about her little magic doll, so she said, "I did it because of my mother's blessing." "Oh," said Baba Yaga, "I don't want anyone in my house who's been blessed." And she drove Vasilisa out, and she said, "Here's the light you wanted." She took a great stick, and on the top of the stick, she put a glowing skull. And Vasilisa walked to the forest with the skull before her. She came to her stepmother's house, and she said, "Surely my stepmother and stepsisters will have had a light by now." But the great skull spoke to her. "Do not throw me away." And the stepmother and the stepsisters came out of the house, and they ran to her. "We've tried light after light, but none would stay lit." And suddenly, the skull began to glow with an intense white burning light, and the stepmother and the stepsisters were burned into cinders. Well, Vasilisa ran away. She ran to the house of a dear, kind old woman who lived nearby, and the old woman took care of her. And after a while, Vasilisa said, "Dear Granny, I would like to repay you for your great kindness to me. I would like to make some linen. Could you get me some flax?" So the old woman got her flax, and Vasilisa spun the flax into thread as fine as a spider's web. And then she took her little doll, and she fed it, and she said, "Make me a loom so that I may weave the most wonderful linen." So the little doll made her a loom, and Vasilisa wove the thread into fine linen cloth. And she washed it, and she bleached it until it was white as snow. And she gave it to the old woman, and she said, "Dear Granny, take this to the marketplace and keep the money for yourself." "No," said the old woman, "cloth such as this is fit for the Tsar himself." So she took the beautiful linen to the Tsar's palace as a gift, and the Tsar said, "This cloth is wonderful. Now who could make me a shirt from it?" And the old woman said, I think my foster daughter could. So she took the linen back to Vasilisa, and as Vasilisa cut out the shirt for the Tsar, she said, I knew this was a job I would have to do myself. She made a beautiful shirt for the Tsar, and as the old woman took the shirt to the palace, Vasilisa washed her face, and she combed her hair, and she put on her best dress and sat and waited. And the Tsar came to see who had made him the beautiful shirt. And when he saw Vasilisa the beautiful, he knelt down before her and asked her to become his wife, his Tsarina. So Vasilisa went to live in the palace with the Tsar, and the old woman came to live in the palace as well. And when Vasilisa's father returned from his travels, he came and joined them. But for the rest of her days, Vasilisa was always careful to keep her little magic doll in her pocket. And that's the end of that story. So we'll take a break and come back.
We're a part of your town, a picture of the things you do, working 24 hours every day to keep the signal coming through. We're Continental, we put everything on the line for you.
In a certain kingdom, there was a Tsar who had 3 sons of marriageable age. And he called his sons before him, and he said, it is time for you all to get married. I want each of you to shoot an arrow into the air, and wherever the arrow lands, there will your bride be. So the oldest son shot his arrow to the right, and it landed on the estate of a great lord. And the lord's daughter picked up the arrow and gave it to the prince when he came to get it, and the prince took her back to his father's kingdom. And the second son shot his arrow to the left, and it went into a great walled city. And the daughter of a rich merchant picked up his arrow. When he came to get it, gave it to him, and he brought her back to his father's palace. Now the youngest son, his name was Ivan, and he shot his arrow straight ahead. And he couldn't find it. He looked and looked for his arrow, and after 3 days he came to a swamp. And there in the swamp, he saw a green frog with golden eyes, and in her mouth was Ivan's arrow. And Ivan thought, I can't marry a frog. But the frog said, Frog, though I may be, if you don't marry me, you'll regret it. Don't forget it. So Ivan took the frog home and married her. Well, after several months, the Tsar decided to bring his sons before him. And he said, now I want to test each of your wives. I want each of your wives to make me a shirt out of this material. And he gave each of the 3 sons a piece of cloth. So Ivan took his cloth back to his frog wife and said, I don't suppose you can make a shirt, can you? And his frog wife said, believe in me, and you shall see. That night, while Ivan was sleeping, the frog took the material and she put it in her mouth and chewed it up and went to the window and she spit it out and she called out, breezes of the evening, breezes come soon, make me a royal shirt with the rays of the moon. The next morning, 3 sons brought the shirts that their wives had made to their father. And the father took the shirt from the oldest son, and he said, "Well, I might wear this shirt to wash the dog." And he took the second shirt and he said, "Well, I might wear this shirt under my bathrobe." But then Ivan gave him the shirt that the frog wife had made. And the Tsar said, "This is a wonderful shirt. I'd wear this one on my birthday, on Christmas, on Easter. It's a holiday shirt." Now, I want to see if your wives can bake bread. I want each of your wives to bake me a loaf of bread by tomorrow morning. Now, those other 2 wives, they weren't stupid. They noticed how the frog wife had beaten them out, so they decided to watch her carefully and do everything that she had done. So they watched as the frog kneaded the dough. But they did not hear her murmur, "Rise right, bake bright, be golden brown and snow white." And then she put her bread in a cold oven, and they put theirs in burning hot ovens. And when the 3 loaves of bread were brought before the Tsar said of the first loaf, "Well, I suppose a starving man might eat it." And he said of the second loaf, "I don't think even a rat would eat this gluey mess." But when he saw the loaf that Ivan's wife had baked, it was in the shape of a castle, and it was light and beautiful. He said, "Oh, this is a holiday cake. Let's have a party." So he invited everyone to a great feast and dance. And the wives of the 2 oldest sons were there. And they said, "Ivan, your frog wife isn't here yet." But suddenly there was a clap of thunder, and a carriage approached the palace, drawn by wonderful horses, and out of the carriage stepped a beautiful woman. And Ivan went up to her and said, "This is my wife." He brought her into the palace, and the other 2 wives decided to watch her carefully and do everything that she did. And they noticed when Ivan's wife drank wine, she poured a little bit of it in her right sleeve, and they did the same. And when she ate chicken, she took the bones and she put them in her left sleeve, and they did the same. And then the Tsar said, "I wish for my 3 daughter-in-laws to dance for me." And when Ivan's wife danced, she shook out her right arm, and from her sleeve came a beautiful fountain. And she shook out her left arm, and swans flew out of her sleeve and swam in the fountain. And when the other wives danced, they shook out their right arms and hit their partners in the face with wine. And when they shook out their left arms, everybody was hit with chicken bones. And so they were banished from the Tsar's palace. Ivan went back to his wife's bedchamber, and there, in her bed, he found the frog skin. He took the frog skin and he threw it into the fire, and the flames consumed it. And his wife came in and said, "Why did you do that? Why did you burn my frog skin? If only you could have waited a little bit longer, the enchantment would have been broken. For I am Vasilisa the Wise, and now I must leave you, and you must search for me through 9 times 9 kingdoms." And she turned into a swan and flew away. Well, Ivan went out in search of his wife, and he walked 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 till he fell down in exhaustion. When he woke up, an old man was standing over him. And the old man said, "What kind of a dream will you have? You were mumbling something about a frog skin." So Ivan told the old man the entire story. And the old man said, "You shouldn't have done that. That was your wife's frog skin. It belonged to her. You shouldn't have touched it. She is Vasilisa the Wise, the daughter of the Sea King. Her father enchanted her to live as a frog for 3 years. And in a few months the spell would have been broken. But I will help you. Take this golden ball and roll it along the ground and follow it wherever it might lead." So Ivan rolled the ball along the ground, and he came to the edge of the sea. And there on the beach was a house on chicken legs, turning round and round and round. And Ivan called out, "House, if you will, please stand still." And the house stopped spinning and opened its door to him. Ivan went inside, and there was an old hag, an old witch, an old wise Baba Yaga. And he told her his troubles. And she said, "Yes, Vasilisa the Wise, I think she is at the home of my sister. And she is disguised within a bundle of sticks. Get the bundle of sticks and break them over your knee, throwing half in front of you and half in back of you, and you will see what you will see." So Ivan again took his ball and rolled it along the ground, and he came to another house on chicken legs, spinning round and round and round. And this time he whispered, "House, if you will, please stand still." And very quietly he crept into the house and hid behind the door. And he saw Baba Yaga's sister, another witch, take a bundle of sticks and place them in a gold box and lock it with a key. When she was doing something else, Ivan stole the key from her pocket, unlocked the golden box, and took out the bundle of sticks. And he broke the sticks over his knee, throwing one half before him and one half in back. And there stood his wife, Vasilisa the Wise. And she threw her arms around his neck and said, "You have broken the enchantment forever." And Ivan took his wife back to his father's kingdom, where they both ruled as Tsar and Tsarina in many years with great happiness.
I was there. I drank mead ales, while underneath that tree I sat and listened while that wise old cat told me these ancient fairy tales.